Oh. Doing a wood burning for somebody. Brook trout. Brook trout are pretty cool. Probably out of all the fish I chase with a fly rod so far, brook trout are probably, I don't know that they're my favorite fish because of what they are. I mean, they are pretty cool. In the Adirondacks, they're like the fish. But it's not because of what they are. It's probably 50-50 what they are, wild brook trout that I go after, and the other 50% would be where they are. You gotta go to some really cool, you should. Like, if you really want to chase brook trout in the Adirondacks, you should search them out in some really awesome places. Don't go park by a bridge and fish the bridge. Go a long ways in. That's my fascination with brook trout, where they live. They're pretty awesome. I got a list of brook trout streams on my desk at work. Probably not a good place to have it, because when I sit down at my desk at work, it's usually the first thing I look to before I do anything else. Reminds me where I could be at the moment instead of at work. Gotta pay bills. Doesn't sting any less though, that's for sure. So, one of my favorite brook trout streams is up in the Adirondacks, and it is literally a stream. I'm talking about comes down a pretty good incline, and it's all boulders and all pocket water. That's really all it is pocket water. A pool in the stream might be 6 feet across if you're lucky. Most of them are smaller and about the same length or smaller. And I will go as far as I need to. It's not about getting bored catching or not catching fish. Where these fish live is just awesome. I mean, Bob Ross was into his paintings because of where he wanted to be. Well, those brook trout are exactly where Bob Ross wanted to be. They're in the sticks. There's no people. If you're finding them where people are, then you're not finding the right ones. You got to go farther where you're not seeing any people. Clean, cold water. That's what they need. You're not going to find them in any warm, dirty, nasty stuff. As a matter of fact, once the water warms up about 68 degrees or so, you quit fishing for them, because it's not good to catch them when the water's that warm. They build up a lactic acid in their body, and when you stress them out, catching them in that warm water, they're going to die whether you release them or not. So sometime in June, depending on water temperatures, is when I quit going after them, and then I'll go for smallmouth. But any day I can go up north and chase brook trout, man, they're cool. So last year, I'll tell you a brook trout story, and it has less to do with the fish and more about me making a fool of myself. Last year, I'm on this stream I'm talking about, my favorite stream. I only found it the year before, so I know it really well, but only up to a certain point. There's a certain point where I've never gone past. Maybe this year will be the year. We'll see. Problem is, it's so hard to skip past the good stuff that I already know to get to the stuff that I don't know, that I always fish and I never have time to go any farther. So anyways, I was on this stream, and I have a really bad habit of jumping from rock to rock. I'm 44. I still try to run around in the woods like I'm in my 20s. It just doesn't work out the way it used to. Things don't bend the way they used to. Joints don't hold up under landings the way they used to. Twists have different repercussions on my body than they used to. So I'm on this stream, and there are two big boulders. When I say boulders, I'm talking, size of, just like the size of a fish. You do this. I do that with boulders. They're about this big. Sure. And there's one, and there's another one. One on one side of the stream, one on the other side of the stream. And I was just going to step across. There was probably, I'd say, now that I think about it, there's probably 4 feet of water in between the two of them. And I'm only 5'6", so do the math with my steps. I had my net on my back, I had my fly rod in my hand, I had felt soles on, and the rock I was stepping to had a little bit of moss on it. So that was no good with the felts. Cleats would have been great. You can't be prepared for every condition. You just got to be prepared to deal with it and make smart decisions, which I don't always do. So when I stepped, I took one long step across. Basically, I was just reaching out with my right leg to land on this other rock. But it was a little farther than I had thought it was, and I realized my foot wasn't really going to reach it, but I was already committed to the step. So instead of stopping and just stepping into the creek, into the stream, with my left foot, I kind of pushed off and gave a little hop. My original plan was my left foot would still be planted on this boulder while my right foot planted on the next boulder I was going to. And instead I gave myself a little hop. So I was in the air, no feet connected to any rocks for a half a second. And when my right foot connected to the rock I was jumping to, my left foot had no purchase on anything. And my right foot proceeded to skid up the rock like you would ice. And I knew as soon as my foot started going that it was all over with. And in the cartoons or the old black and white movies where somebody would slip on a banana peel and they would go completely horizontal with the ground and kind of hover in midair for a second before they dropped. Well, my foot went up, and I know that I hovered in midair for a good minute. I know this because I listened as I was hovering in midair for about a minute, looking up at the tree and the skies through the leaves. I was listening to the water flow underneath me. It was like this surreal moment. Beautiful sky. The leaves are moving in a breeze. I can hear the water moving underneath me. I hovered there for like a minute. And when I came down right in the stream, on top of that net that was on my back. And it hurt. I didn't break the net somehow. I didn't break my neck somehow. But I was in pain for a couple of days after that. I do dumb stuff like that all the time. And it was all for a brook trout. For a little 6-inch fish. Totally worth it. I caught a lot of fish that day. In the same area, I say there's no, I love hiking. There's no hike that would be too long to get to brook trout because of the country you're traveling through. But I will say that in that same area, myself and a couple of friends, Tim and Nikki, if you're watching this, they were the ones. We hiked a 15-mile round trip. We had backpacks on. We had planned to stay out there at night because we didn't know what we were going to run into. 15-mile round trip for one 4-inch, somewhere's in there, 1 4-inch brook trout. 15 miles. So every time I say, man, I'd hike as far as I needed to catch brook trout, then I think about that. And, man, that trip sucked. I mean, it was a nice hike. If we weren't going for brook trout, if we were just hiking, it was beautiful. But the fact that we were going with the intent to see if we couldn't find fish and catch them, and came up with nothing but 1 4-inch fish, that was rough. That was really rough. So I'm doing this for somebody. They're going to hang it on their wall because that's what we do with this stuff. If we can't be out on the water, fishermen love to have stuff that reminds them of days on the water. I got a bunch of junk in my house, and when I say junk, I mean junk. I got nobody. I live alone. I got nobody to tell me no. So when I find stuff, if I got money in my pocket, you know, old reels, old rods, old photographs, paintings, books, anything to do with fishing in general, especially fly fishing, I'll buy it. I don't need it. And I always said I'm not materialistic, but if you look at my house, apparently I am, because I have so much fishing junk. It's a little ridiculous. I need to have a garage sale. But we like to hang the stuff on our walls. Makes us think about being on the water and the good days we've had when we can't be on the water. I got this reel up there. It's an old HI, Horak Zibitson, which was a tackle company in Utica, New York, which is 2 towns over from here. I can be there in less than 10 minutes if I run the red lights. So it's pretty cool. It's a piece of history, local history. I got a lot of reels and a few rods from HI because they're local. They're not worth anything, but they're cool. And I've got this one. In my old house, before I got divorced, I had a room. One room to the house was for me. Call it a man cave, call it whatever you want. It was my room where I wrote my first book. I tied flies. I did some wood burning. Anything to do with fishing, that was the room. And the walls were covered with all kinds of cool stuff that I had brought home. And we had a discussion, me and my then wife, about how much stuff I had in the room. And we came to the conclusion, we came to the conclusion that I had enough stuff in the room and I really didn't need to bring anything else home to hang on the walls. There was a lot of stuff in there. There was. So I'm working a job in Syracuse. on the roof of a 4 or 5 story old brick factory building that had become a antique store. So at one point I walked through the store while we were waiting for some parts to show up for the roof, and I found an old fly reel. What do you think I was looking for? I wasn't looking for teacups. And the elevator to get upstairs in this place, it was an old freight elevator. There were no buttons to push that would send it to a certain floor. You had to have somebody running the elevator. Wooden cage doors opened, you got in, they closed them for you. They asked you where you wanted to go. They took you up to that floor. So we had an older gentleman, looked just like George Burns. I wondered if he wasn't George Burns. If George Burns didn't fake his death, this guy looked just like him. If you don't know who George Burns is, if you're too young, look up Oh God, You Devil. Classic. Anyways, this guy, he had the same charisma, the same mannerisms. He dressed like him. He looked like him. He looked like George Burns. So I'm telling my buddy Mike that I was working with that I found the fly rod on one of the shelves in the store, and I really wanted to take it home. It was only $14, but if I brought any more fishing stuff home, we were going to have issues because my wife had told me, yeah, you got enough stuff in this room. We laughed about it. And then George Burns, while he's running the elevator, he's listening to this. He looks at me and he says, let me ask you a question, son. He really said, son. This is how the conversation went. I'm not making it up. He said, son. I called him sir. He said, let me ask you a question, son. Do you work hard? I said, sure I do. I most definitely do. He says, do you spend your money all willy-nilly however you want? Or you try to be responsible with it and you pay your bills? I said, I pay my bills. He said, do you cheat on your wife? I said, no, sir. I do not cheat on my wife. No, sir. And he said, so you work hard, you pay your bills, and you don't cheat on your wife. And I said, yes, sir. That's all correct. And he said, the reel's $14. Buy the damn thing. I got a good laugh out of it. You know, Mike was listening. Mike told me up on the roof, I thought he was going to ask you all those questions and then give you the reel. No, the answer was, it's only $14. Buy the damn reel. So I bought the damn reel. I took the reel home. I put it on a little shelf with a couple of other reels. It was really cool, green HI automatic fly reel. Worthless. I'd never use it, but it just looked cool. A couple weeks later, my father's at the house, and we have to go in the room to use the computer. And my wife is firing up the computer and getting it ready for him. She's got to help him do something. And he's looking around at all the stuff on the walls. And out of everything in that room that he could have spotted and asked about, doesn't he pick out that stinking green HI automatic fly reel that I had bought after I agreed I wouldn't buy anything else? He says, hey, where'd you get this? I just bought one of these the other day at an antique store. Mine's red, though. Where'd you get this? Doesn't my wife look up and say, yeah, where did that come from? I don't remember that being there. That's a new one, isn't it? So the jig was up, and I looked at her, and with my quick, brilliant, genius thinking, I was completely honest with her, and I said, listen, I know that we agreed I wouldn't buy anything else, but I found this in that antique store in Syracuse I worked on top of a couple weeks ago, and the old man at the store told me to either buy the reel or cheat on you. So I bought the reel. We all laughed, but I think I was the only one that really understood what I was laughing at, because I was the only one in the elevator that really got it. That's just a story I like to tell about all the crap I've got built up in the house. I should have a garage sale. I said I'm gonna sell all this stuff. I don't need any of it. And what does my 14-year-old son tell me? Well, Dad, why would you sell it all? Because then you just spend all your time going around to the garage sales and buying it all back. And he's right. But the wood burning's a little different. It's not old junk. Most of the stuff I got is old junk. Alright, so I told you a story about falling and almost breaking my neck chasing 4 or 5 inch fish, hiking 15 miles for one 4-inch fish. I told you, I am the marginal fly fisherman. Don't forget it. And I told you a good story about how to get out of getting in trouble because you bought more crap that you didn't need and brought it home and got caught. It worked for me. I can't say it worked. Here I am, single in my own house, drinking a warm beer. I guess whether it worked or not is all relative at this point. So I still haven't bought my new waders. I still need to sell books. Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. I found out yesterday that you can even go on Target.com and buy my books. Reflections of a Fly Rod, Carper Jerks. Buy some books, read some stories. Help me buy some new waders so I can keep working on the next book. And I will see you next time on the Marginal Fly Fisherman.